I don't hate my job. It pays well enough, the people are decent, and most days the work is manageable. But there are times, especially when a big project is due, when it becomes overwhelming. Deadlines creep up faster than I expect, and before I know it, I'm the last one in the office, racing against the clock. That's exactly how I found myself working late that night. It was already past 6 when I glanced at the time, stretching my arms over my head as I heard the familiar sound of my coworkers packing up for the evening. Drawers closing, computer screens flickering off, muffled goodbyes echoing through the aisles of the cubicles. A few of them passed my desk, offering sympathetic nods. I forced a half-hearted chuckle, but my eyes drifted back to the stack of papers in front of me. A daunting pile of spreadsheets, reports, and presentation notes I still had to finalize. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., I had to present this project to my boss, and there was no way I was going to be unprepared. I sighed, rubbing the bridge of my nose. The past few weeks had been brutal, with long hours eating into my nights. My body was exhausted, my mind sluggish, but I had no choice. I had to get this done. By the time the last of my coworkers had left, the office had grown eerily quiet. The hum of the overhead fluorescent lights was the only sound accompanying the soft tapping of my keyboard. The occasional creak of my chair echoed too loudly in the empty room. I tried to focus, tried to push through the fatigue, but after a few hours, my eyelids felt impossibly heavy. I needed coffee. With a groggy sigh, I pushed back from my desk and made my way to the break room. The hallway leading there felt different that night. Longer, darker, emptier. The usual buzz of conversations and printers spitting out reports was gone, leaving only my footsteps clicking against the tile. The break room was dimly lit, the vending machines humming softly in the corner. I fumbled with the coffee maker, pouring a generous amount of grounds into the filter. The rich, bitter scent filled the air as the machine gurgled to life. I leaned against the counter, rubbing my eyes while I waited. A few minutes later, I poured the steaming liquid into a chipped office mug, the heat warming my hands as I took a cautious sip. It was strong, almost too strong, but I needed it. Back at my desk, I took a deep breath, ready to push through the final stretch. The caffeine helped, but only for so long. Maybe an hour passed before the drowsiness started creeping back in, like a thick fog settling over my mind. I tried everything to fight it. I stretched, stood up, even walked a slow lap around the empty office. None of it worked. My head felt heavy, my vision blurred at the edges. The words on my screen stopped making sense. Maybe, just a few seconds. I told myself that if I could close my eyes just for a moment, just rest my head on the desk, I'd feel better. A short break, nothing more. As my head lowered, the cool surface of the desk felt strangely comfortable. My breathing slowed, my mind drifted, and then everything went dark. I jolted awake with a sharp inhale, my heart hammering in my chest. My breath was unsteady, and for a second, I wasn't even sure where I was. The dim glow of my computer monitor cast a soft light across my desk, the only real source of illumination in an otherwise darkened office. How long had I been asleep? Everything was still silent, eerily so. I had only meant to close my eyes for a few seconds, maybe a few minutes at most. I stretched my arms, rubbing my face as I stood up. I needed another coffee, something to shake this groggy, uneasy feeling that clung to me. And that's when I noticed it. Something was different. My cubicle, my entire workspace, was the only one left in the room. The desk, the partitions, the scattered office supplies, everything that had been there was now gone. I stood frozen, my mind scrambling to make sense of what I was seeing. What was going on? I took a step back, my eyes darting around the room. The layout, it wasn't right. The walls felt closer, the ceiling somehow lower, and the windows. I turned towards them, expecting to see the faint glow of streetlights outside. But there was nothing. No glass, no blinds, no faint reflections of the city beyond. The windows were gone. No, they weren't gone. They had been walled over. Thick, seamless walls now stood where they had once been, as if the windows had never existed in the first place. My breath hitched, and for the first time, I felt a true, creepy dread crawl up my spine. I swallowed hard, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe it was a prank, some ridiculous, elaborate joke my coworkers had set up while I was sleeping. But that didn't make sense. This wasn't a simple rearrangement of furniture. This was something else. My stomach twisted as I stepped away from my desk. I turned towards the hallway leading to the break room, desperate for something normal. But the hallway wasn't normal. It was supposed to be no more than 20 or 30 feet long, a short stretch that led past a few other offices before ending at the break room. But now it stretched on forever. The lights above flickered slightly, casting long shadows against an impossible distance. The end of the hallway was nowhere in sight. Doors lined the walls on either side, far more than had ever been there before. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. I felt a dry lump in my throat as I called out. Nothing, no response, no echo. My voice just disappeared, swallowed by the empty, stretching corridor. My pulse quickened, panic creeping in as I turned away from the hallway and scanned what remained of my office space. I spotted a door, the one that should have led to my boss's office. Maybe he was still here. Maybe he could explain what the hell was happening. I rushed to the door, gripping the handle with clammy fingers before swinging it open. I froze. This wasn't an office. The space beyond was endless. A maze of walls and corridors stretched before me, bathed in a sickly yellow light that hummed with an almost mechanical drone. The floor was covered in thin patterned carpet that looked worn, aged, like it existed long before I ever stepped into this building. It went on forever. I stood there, my breath shallow, my body screaming at me to turn back. But then, behind me, a sound. I spun around, my heart hammering as I looked towards the long hallway. Something was there. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. Movement, soft and deliberate, growing closer. I took a step forward, squinting into the dimness, hoping, praying it was just another coworker, someone who had stayed late like me. But I saw nothing, no one. Then, the lights at the far end of the hallway flickered and went out. One by one, they shut off in sequence, the darkness creeping closer, swallowing the corridor piece by piece. And that's when I saw it. A shape. A figure standing in the encroaching blackness. But it wasn't human. A low guttural cry echoed through the space, something primal, something wrong. The sound of it clawed at my brain, triggering every deep instinctual fear inside of me. I stepped back, then another cry, closer this time. Panic surged through me. I had to run. I didn't know where. I didn't know what this thing was. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I could not let it reach me. The only path left was through the door, into the maze. Without hesitation, I turned and sprinted through, slamming the door shut behind me. I stumbled forward, gasping for breath, my hands trembling as I braced myself against a desk, trying to steady my thoughts. I had no idea where I was. The space around me looked like my office, but it wasn't. The rows of cubicles were gone. Instead, there were scattered desks, each with a chair, arranged haphazardly throughout the room. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a dim, sickly glow over the area. There were papers on some of the desks, but they were blank, just stacks of crisp white sheets that looked untouched. My breathing was unsteady as I scanned the room. At the far end, I spotted another door. I didn't hesitate. I hurried towards it, my footsteps echoing eerily in the empty space. The door opened into a hallway, lined with more doors. I moved cautiously, checking behind me every few seconds, expecting to see that thing from the darkness pursuing me. But for now, I seemed alone. I opened the first door on my left, an office, empty. The next one, another office, identical. Every room I checked was the same. Blank desks, chairs, old filing cabinets with no labels, computers that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. Then I saw it. One of the offices had a computer that was on. It was an older model. The keyboard was thick and yellowed with age, and the mouse was the kind with a rolling ball underneath. The strangest part is that it had power. I moved closer, my breath hitching as I realized there were no cables connected to it. No power cord, no wires. It was just running. I hesitated for a moment, before gripping the mouse, the smooth plastic feeling alien under my fingers. I clicked around the desktop. Nothing but a blank screen. Except for one file. In the corner of the screen was an icon labeled Exit. Relief flooded through me. I clicked it. The screen flickered, and an image opened. I stared at it in confusion. A red ball. It sat on the wet concrete of what looked like a water park. In the background, I could make out a bright yellow slide curving over a pool. The water shimmered under the light. It was just a simple, innocent picture. But it meant nothing to me. What was this supposed to be? What did it mean? How was this an exit? And how was it supposed to help me get out of here? I only found more questions than answers. I clicked the file again, hoping that something else would happen. Nothing. Frustration surged through me, and I let out a shaky breath. Whatever this was, it wasn't an answer. I turned away from the screen, my heart pounding as I left the room. I wandered the halls, searching for anything that made sense. The walls were strange here. The paint was an odd off-white color, and the texture looked wrong, like it had been stretched too thin over something that wasn't drywall. Some of the doors were locked, others led to a more of the same. Empty, lifeless offices. The air felt thick, stale. The lighting was worse now, flickering occasionally, casting long shifting shadows that made my stomach twist with unease. Then, a sound. My body locked up as a blood-curdling yell shattered the silence. It was the same horrific sound from earlier, only this time, it was close. I spun around, my pulse hammering in my ears. My eyes darted to every open office, searching for something, for anything. Then I saw it. At the far end of the hall. The thing. Even now, I don't know how to explain what I saw. It was tall, too tall. Its elongated limbs stretching unnaturally, like its body had been pulled and warped into something grotesque. Its skin was dark and featureless, shifting like a shadow that had been given form. Its head, or what should have been a head, was wrong. There was no face, only a hollow, gaping space where one should have been. And then it screamed. The sound was deafening, an inhuman wail that rattled in my chest like a shockwave. And then it moved. It lunged forward with impossible speed, and I ran. I tore down the hall, my feet pounding against the carpet as the walls blurred past me. The lights above flickered violently, as if they too were panicking. The thing behind me was fast, inhumanly fast, gaining on me with each horrible skittering movement. I turned a corner, another hallway, identical to the last, then another. I was lost in the labyrinth of this twisted, endless office. The sound of it was right behind me, its heavy, wet footsteps pounding against the floor, the air crackling with each guttural noise it let out. I turned another corner. Dead end. My stomach dropped. But then I noticed something. In the center of the room, a hole. A perfect circular hole in the floor, like an open mouth waiting to swallow me. I rushed to the edge, peering down. Bottomless. The darkness stretched forever, an abyss with no visible end. I turned back. The monster was coming. Its elongated limbs twisted unnaturally as it sprinted towards me, its faceless void somehow staring right at me. I had two choices: jump into the hole, into nothingness, or stay here and die. I knew I didn't have a choice. I took one last breath and jumped. The darkness swallowed me whole. I expected to feel my stomach lurch, to feel the rush of wind as I plummeted into the unknown. But there was nothing. No falling, no gravity pulling me down. It felt like I was just floating, suspended in an endless black void. Panic clawed at my chest as I twisted my body, reaching out for something, anything. There was nothing but the suffocating emptiness around me. My breath grew ragged. Was I stuck? Was this death? And then, water. I slammed into it, the cold shocking every nerve in my body. I flailed, my instincts taking over as I fought my way towards the surface. My hands broke through first, then my head. I gasped, pulling in a deep breath of air, my lungs burning from the sudden impact. I wiped the water from my face and forced my eyes open. It was a pool, but not just any pool. This one was massive, bigger than anything I had ever seen before. The room around me was no longer the faded yellow maze I had escaped. Instead, everything was bright white, almost sterile, like an indoor water park or an abandoned swim facility. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, lined with long rows of lights that flickered every few seconds. The air smelled faintly of chlorine, a clean but artificial scent that felt too perfect, too controlled. I swam towards the edge, my limbs aching as I reached for the smooth tile and pulled myself out. Water dripped from my clothes, pooling beneath me as I stood up, my breathing still uneven. And then I saw it. Above the pool, built against the far wall, was a room with a large window. Light shined from behind the glass, casting a soft glow into an otherwise empty space. And inside that room, a person. I froze. At least I thought it was a person. Their silhouette stood perfectly still, staring down at me from behind the glass. Something was wrong with them. Their proportions seemed slightly off, their limbs a little too long, their posture unnaturally rigid. A chill crawled up my spine. I blinked, and they were gone. I swallowed hard, my throat dried despite the dampness clinging to me. Was my mind playing tricks on me? Or was there actually someone, something, watching me? I turned away from the window, scanning the massive room. There was no door, no exit, but I did see something else. At the far end of the pool, the water broke off into a smaller stream, an artificial current leading into a tunnel. A long, dark tunnel. My stomach twisted. I moved towards it cautiously, peering into the inky blackness. There were no walkways, no ledges. If I wanted to go through, I'd have to get back into the water. I turned, glancing one last time for another way out. There wasn't one. I took a deep breath and jumped in. The cold wrapped around me once more as I waded forward, the water reaching up to my chest. The tunnel stretched endlessly, the light from the pool area growing dimmer behind me. Then I saw them. Pink flamingo pool floats. They drifted silently through the water, their bright plastic bodies bumping against me as I passed. Their hollow, painted eyes seemed to stare at me as I moved deeper into the tunnel. I tried to shake off the unease creeping through my body, but the further I walked, the worse it got. The light from the pool room was now nothing more than a faint glow in the distance. Ahead of me, only darkness. I kept moving, my breath shaky, the water sloshing around me. Then, a sound. Behind me. A faint ripple in the water. My entire body went rigid. Something was moving, and it was fast. I turned my head slightly, my ears straining to pick up any detail. The sound grew closer and closer, until I could hear something else mixed in with the splashes. Laughter. A low, distorted laughter. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I pushed through the water as fast as I could, my legs burning with every step. The tunnel was endless, the blackness stretching out in all directions, but I didn't stop. The laughter grew louder, closer. The thing chasing me was gaining. I could hear splashing behind me, the sickening slosh of the water as whatever was back there closed the distance. I wasn't gonna make it. Then a light, a faint glowing spot at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't close, but it was there. I forced my body forward, every muscle screaming in exhaustion. But I couldn't stop. I had to reach that light. I broke through the light, gasping for air as I fell. I hit the water hard, my body plunging deep into the pool below. My limbs screamed with exhaustion, but I forced myself upwards, kicking furiously until I broke the surface. I sucked in a desperate breath and frantically swam for the edge, my arms dragging heavily through the water. My mind was racing, every nerve on fire. Whatever was behind me, whatever had been laughing in the tunnel, was still coming. I could hear it. The sloshing, the erratic movements, the thing pulling itself forward through the tunnel's water. I hauled myself onto the pool's edge, coughing, chest heaving as I scrambled to my feet. My head whipped around, searching for anywhere to run. And then I saw it. Across the pool, a yellow slide. I froze. Something about it clawed at my memory, and then it hit me. The picture. the old computer in the office, the red ball. I turned my head slightly, and there it was, the same red ball from the image, sitting near the slide's base. I didn't know why. I couldn't explain it, but I knew I needed that ball. I had to get it. There was no way around it. I'd have to go back into the water. I clenched my jaw, took a deep breath, and jumped in. The cold gripped me once more as I swam furiously across, every muscle screaming from exhaustion. The thought of whatever was behind me kept my body moving, kept me pushing forward. I reached the far edge and pulled myself up, scrambling forward. The red ball sat there, small, much smaller than I expected. It easily fit in the palm of my hand, no larger than one of those cheap bouncy balls from vending machines. But when I held it, it didn't feel like rubber. It was smooth, hard plastic. I didn't even have time to question it. A sound from the tunnel. I turned just in time to see it crawl out. Something out of a nightmare. It slithered onto the wet tile, its long coiling body sliding out from the darkness. A serpent. No, not a serpent. A thing, something far worse. It moved like a snake, but where its head should have been was a woman's face. But not a human woman. Her skin was too pale, stretched over too tight on an elongated skull. Her eyes were wrong, black voids that seemed to pull in the light. And her mouth twisted into a grotesque, ear-to-ear smile. Too wide, too knowing. She stared at me, and I screamed. Her head snapped back towards me instantly, her black, soulless eyes locking onto mine. Didn't think. I tucked the ball in my pocket and I ran. My foot slipped against the wet tile, my body crashing hard against the ground. I groaned, pushing myself up, but she was already moving. The thing slithered towards me impossibly fast. I knew I couldn't outrun her. My eyes darted up. The slide. I ran for it, grabbing onto the ladder and climbing as fast as I could. My soaked clothes clung to my body, making every movement harder, but I forced myself up. I threw myself into the tube, pressing my back against the smooth plastic, trying to stay inside. Then a jolt. The entire slide shook violently as something slammed into it. I dug my fingers against the smooth walls, bracing myself. Another impact, another violent shake. Then silence. I held my breath, my chest rising and falling rapidly. I hesitated, then slowly, carefully, peeked out of the tube. Nothing. The pool was still. The room was silent. Maybe it was gone. I swallowed, gripping the slide's inner walls, pulling myself slightly forward to get a better look. And then, her face. She was there, filling the entire opening of the slide, pressed inches from my own. Grinning. I screamed. I lost my grip, my body slipping backwards. I fell. I slid down the tunnel, spiraling into the depths, bracing myself for the inevitable plunge into the pool below. But it never came. I kept sliding, and sliding. The tube stretched on forever, twisting and turning, an endless descent. The slide wasn't this long, it wasn't possible. But after everything I'd seen, everything I'd endured, an infinite water slide wasn't even the strangest thing anymore. Then something changed. My vision blurred, my limbs felt heavy. A strange drowsiness washed over me, an unshakable exhaustion creeping into my bones. My eyes fought to stay open, but it was too strong. The world around me began to spin. Darkness crawled in from the edges of my vision. And then, everything went black. I jolted awake. My breath was ragged, my body stiff as I sat straight up in my chair. My hands gripped the armrest, my knuckles white. My heart pounded against my ribs as I scanned the surroundings. I was in my office. My real office. The lights hummed softly overhead, casting their normal pale glow, the occasional hum of the air conditioning. It was all back to normal. No endless hallways, no walled-up windows, no pools, no tunnels, no monsters. Just me. I let out a slow, shaky breath and rubbed my temples. My body was drenched in sweat, my muscles sore as if I'd truly been running for my life. I turned to the window. Outside, the early morning skyline was exactly as it should be. The buildings, the faint movement of cars below. The world carrying on, like nothing had happened. Then, a noise from behind me. I spun around, my nerves still on edge. It was just the janitor. He paused, seeing my reaction, and gave me a smile. He apologized, saying he didn't mean to scare me. I told him it was okay, it had just been a long night. He nodded and pushed his cart past me. I turned back to my computer screen, still trying to convince myself that what I had just experienced wasn't real. I checked the time, 6:30 a.m. The office would be opening soon. I laughed to myself, a low, almost hysterical sound. It was just a dream, a crazy, vivid, the most real dream I had ever had, but still just a dream, wasn't it? I exhaled, shaking my head and glancing at my screen. My report was almost finished, somehow, despite everything. My work had still gotten done. As people started trickling into the office, one of my coworkers noticed me sitting there. They asked if I had been here the whole night. I laughed and said I was by accident. They laughed, shaking their heads before going to their desk. I stood up, still feeling a little lightheaded. Coffee. I needed coffee. I made my way to the break room, the scent of fresh brewed coffee filling the air as I reached for a mug. Then, I had a feeling. Something small in my pocket. My blood ran cold. I reached in with trembling fingers, my breath hitching in my throat. I pulled it out and froze. It was the red ball. The same one, small, hard plastic. The same ball I had picked up by the slide. My heart stopped. I stared at it, my mind scrambling for an explanation. There was no way. No, it wasn't possible. I swallowed hard, gripping the ball so tightly my knuckles ached. Everything in me wanted to believe it was just a dream. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I had been there. I'd seen what lurked in those impossible hallways. That faceless monster in the dark. That twisted woman serpent. The endless slide into nothingness. And I had been lucky to escape. The thought chilled me. How many others had wandered in and never came back? How many people had been trapped, swallowed by those endless halls? Those things. I stared down at the little red ball, my hands shaking. I had survived, but I wasn't sure if I was truly ever free.